And just when you think Joe Douglas cannot take it another step up, the Jets hit another home run on day two of the NFL draft. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk. Thank you so much for joining us here on this live reaction, breaking down rounds 2 and 3 of the draft. Still technically going on. I'm curious to see if I doubt the Jets will make another trade tonight, but the way this draft has gone, who knows? The NFL draft, of course, continuing tomorrow. And as of now, the Jets with two fourth round 49ers are on the clock. Barring anything drastic, the New York Jets will be done for round two. They had two players, but man, did they make it absolutely count. And I want to start with the latest one, which is Jeremy Ruckert. And this is someone I've been saying since the Senior Bowl. Keep an eye on for the Jets, not only because, yes, he grew up a Jets fan on Long Island, that Long Island connection, but I was saying from the Senior Bowl, like everyone kept saying, oh, it's going to be Dulich from UCLA, Collar, or it's going to be Trey McBride. And I said, yeah, Trey McBride is the number two, is number one on my board just because he's the safest tight end. I said right behind him, I have Jeremy Ruckert. Like I think Ruckert of all these tight ends has the highest upside and fits what you want a typical tight end, big, strong, physical. And look, he was a five-star recruit that went to Ohio State, just never threw him the football, but he had the highest completion percentage when thrown to him and the highest QBR thrown to him over the last 5 years. Like he was top five in terms of wide of pass catchers, and it just showed you how great of a player he is. And I think he's going to be a better pro. But after the free agency period, I was like, maybe the Jets will not think about him. But man, they get another weapon, another big body, another toy for Zach Wilson and LaFleur in this offense to play with. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Please put in the live chat what your thoughts are about today's draft. And I thought it was another smash for the New York Jets, who basically swapped fifth round picks to move up and get Jermaine Johnson first on night one, and then tonight to jump the New York Giants, actually the Houston Texans, but training with the Giants, to move up to pick 36 to select Breece Hall. So the Jets on my board. This to me, I can't explain how great this draft has been because we were talking about last night that they got two players who were number one at their position on the board. They finished tonight with three. Breece Hall was my number one running back at the end of this process. Garrett Wilson, the number one receiver for most people. And you had Amon Garter, the number one corner. And some people even said the best defensive player in draft. On top of all that, they get Jermaine Johnson, who could be a top three or at the very least a top four edge rusher in this draft. And then I had Jeremy Ruckert as the number two overall tight end. I understand he wasn't picked number two in this draft. There's a couple tight ends that went up beforehand, but I kept saying you can't sleep on this Jeremy Ruckert kid. I mean, he is big, he is physical. And when I looked at tight ends, I was going, you know, he really fits with what you want a tight end to be. I mean, he's 6'5", 252 pounds. Like he looks like a tight end. He feels like a tight end. And at the Senior Bowl, really impressed me with his blocking. Like he could do everything. And look, he needs to become a more consistent blocker. But you look, strong-willed athlete, goes up and gets those 50-50 balls, great flexibility. And when they threw him, he made plays. Like you look at his skill set, he fits what you want a great tight end. He just has great body control. I understand it was a one-year starter, basically. But this was also someone that when we were talking about him coming out into college, he was a four-star recruit, the number two tight end in the 2018 recruiting class. And he's lived up to that. I mean, he really is an intriguing player. Absolutely stunned that he was there for the Jets. Maybe the Jets were thinking he might fall to round four. They just looked at him and went, you know, we just cannot look and wait. We cannot just wait for him to fall to us the next day. So as of now, the Jets coming into tomorrow with two fourth round picks. My thought on the whole process is, and Garrett Wilson, of course, getting his Ohio State teammate, he's got to be loving that. But my thought process on this is the Jets have hit another home run. And I think that what they'll do tomorrow is one of two things. They'll either try to get the best player available at 4, I mean, with the first fourth round pick, and then trade back with the second one to accumulate some prospects. And there's still some very intriguing prospects still left on the board here. I really like Tariq Woolen as a great corner. I know a lot of people don't love him, but I have Perry Winfrey, a D tackle. I think he's someone the Jets could keep an eye on. Maybe even someone they move up a couple spots tomorrow, throw in a future pick, because I think they view him as a starting defensive tackle. He was the Senior Bowl MVP. I had a low first round grade on him, the number 3 defensive tackle. They have a chance to get him on the top of the day 3 of the draft. Another guy to keep an eye on is Darian Kinnard, the offensive tackle and guard from Kentucky. I mean, he is an absolute mauler. I mean, Daniel Falali, the 6'8", 385-pounder from Minnesota at tackle. Look, there's some really intriguing prospects still here. And even if they want to go back to edge rusher, there's a couple decent edges. I'm really curious to see what the Jets do tomorrow and how they attack it. But of all the top 30 prospect meetings, like guys that are here, Perry and Winfrey, like I believe he's going to be the priority tomorrow, that he's going to be the guy that the Jets are hyper aggressive to go after and try to get on day. As I'm just checking round 3, I'm just making sure he wasn't drafted by San Francisco. No, in my luck, he was. No, they drafted Danny Gray, the receiver out of SMU. But I mean, looking ahead toward tomorrow, Jets, of course, with the 2 fourth-round picks, don't have fifths because of the trade-ups, but the capital really helping the Jets. Tomorrow they'll pick 6 and 111th overall. I wonder if they try to jump up into above maybe a couple of these teams. Tampa Bay might be someone that wants a defensive tackle, but the Jets also have pick 117 in the 4th round, the Minnesota pick that they got for Chris Herndon. I wonder if what they'll try to do is get the best player available with that first 4th pick, but then what they'll do with the second 4th pick is try to trade back, maybe get like a 5th and a 7th, 5th and a 6th, and then try to fill out some roster and get some picks back for there. But overall, unbelievable day. And getting to the top of it, I mean, this draft started off with a bang. We didn't have to wait long for the Jets. We assumed they're going to pick at 38. And I always remember last night in the press conference, Connor Hughes asked Joe Douglas, is there a player like Elijah Moore that you see falling to day 2 that you're really excited about? And Joe Douglas was just smirking the whole time. Like, you knew there was a player he had an eye on, and we figured it out very early. It was Breece Hall, and you looked at what he can do, that he is a legitimate number 1 back. Like, I love Michael Carter. Michael Carter is an explosive player, and he can be a great back in this league. But the Jets have got one of the most explosive players in the entire draft, a guy that can do everything, a guy that catch out of the backfield, hyper athletic, runs a sub 4.4, big home run hitting running back, highly productive, a guy that was a workhorse in college. And someone like, if you were to say, like, I like Kenneth Walker a lot, but if you were to say who has the upside to be the best back in this, it's Breece Hall. And if I was to say, like, look, Michael Carter can be a very good running back, but the Jets have a running back that if he develops correctly, we might be talking about him as a Pro Bowl talent as the running back position. And he might be someone that eventually enters like that top 6 running back conversation in the NFL. I know that's a lot of hyperbole right now, but he has that type of upside, and the Jets got him in the 2nd round. And Breece Hall had slipped too when he was interviewed on stage tonight that the Jets had actually been talking to him last night, that they were trying to trade back into the 1st round last night to make sure that they could get him. So the Jets might have had 4 first-round picks, the first time that they've had that in almost 20 years, but they were still able to get their guy at the top of the 3rd round. And then it was a long wait in between picks. And I was really curious to see what they would do with that last pick. And I had talked about it on the show today, earlier today, which was, I was saying I had 2 ideas. They're either going to take the best available, maybe trade up, or trade back to get more assets. So as we got closer to the end, I'm thinking there's some really good players still here. Like, there's a surprise. And I do think one of the things that actually helped the Jets was you had another run on receivers again in the 2nd round today. I mean, there was 14 receivers at one point pick, and I believe that was before the end of the 2nd round. It might be 15 through the first 2 rounds, and a couple more even went off the board in the 3rd round. But you also had the quarterbacks start to move. And I was saying earlier today, I thought it'd be the 2nd round, but there was going to be a little bit of a run on quarterbacks. And you saw that in the 3rd round with Malik, with Desmond Ridder. Might not have been there earlier, but ended up being there for the Jets, and he was someone I've been linking to the Senior Bowl, and I did kind of, and I haven't been including him in a lot of my mock drafts lately. He was someone at the beginning of the process I always had the Jets taking in the second round. What changed was when they got the two tight ends in free agency. I was thinking, okay, it's not their biggest need, but you have to admit with Joe Douglas and Zach Wilson, they're putting a lot of pressure on him, and he needs to take a big step forward. But what you cannot say is that the Jets did not give him resources to succeed this year. Because I will say this, after the first two nights of this draft, I don't think any general manager has done over the last 2 years more for their starting quarterback, their second-year quarterback right now, than Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson, I said, has the advantage. Like, he's not changing offensive coordinators. He's not changing offenses. But I look around the league right now, the Bears didn't do anything. They drafted a receiver in the third round who I thought was a stretch for Justin Fields. Trevor Lawrence, they went crazy on defense in this draft. And I'm going, can you get the kid some protection? Can you get the kid some wide receivers, some weapons to throw to? I looked at even Trey Lance. Like, I know they got a running back today and they have some good players, but they have an issue now with their star receiver. And I do wonder what's going to happen with the 49ers. And then you look even at the Patriots. I think the Patriots did a little bit. They got a really good deep threat, but think about what Joe Douglas, like, not even going into last year. Look at what the he has done in this offseason alone, not including last year, this offseason, improving the guard position with Laken Tomlinson, going out there and in this draft, drafting a wide receiver, a tight end, and a running back. I mean, that's pretty darn good. So, and it's amazing because you look at the dearth of talent that was on this offensive team. I mean, we just a couple of years ago when the Jets were struggling, and really you look back at what the lineup what Mike McCagnon had put together for a football team. I mean, we were talking about a receiving core with Demarius Thomas, Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder, Bilal Powell, who I love, but is a decent running back. But at that time, he was 31 years old. Le'Veon Bell, Ryan Griffin, Daniel Brown as like the tight ends. And you look at where they are now. Like, you look at how bad the Jets offense was. I mean, it wasn't that long ago where Matt Forte in his 30s was the lead running back for the New York Jets. And now you look, all of a sudden, the Jets have a great two-headed rushing attack, which takes pressure off Zach. And to win in this league, especially against some of these great quarterbacks, the best defenses keep them off the field. And now the Jets have that ability. And they've added playmakers to score. They've added scores in Jeremy Ruckert. They've added scores in Garrett Wilson. And you can't tell me that they didn't get great intel from Garrett Wilson, because I guarantee you they were asking about Ruckert's worth ethic. They were trying to get as much information as they could. And you look right now, like, the Jets all of a sudden now have a ton of weapons and depth at weapons. I mean, they have three legitimate tight ends that can make plays, and Ruckert probably has the higher ceiling than all of them. And the nice thing for the Jets is they don't need Ruckert to make an impact day one. They can ease him into it, and he can be a guy that they develop and make it to a good player. And I always will go back to the Senior Bowl when they were talking to Ron Middleton, and he was talking about the tight ends. And I said at the time, the biggest thing I got from the Senior Bowl is keep an eye on this kid. I said it multiple times on this show. But I said after the Senior Bowl, like when I was talking about prospect, keep an eye on, I said, keep an eye on Jeremy Ruckert. I know the Long Island connection, but I really listened to Ron Middleton talking about the tight ends. He was saying, Trey McBride, really good, blah, 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 blah. Like, everyone he was talking about was good. But when they mentioned Jeremy Ruckert, his eyes lit up. You could tell the emotions in his face. Like, he got really excited. He was talking about how he loved contact. Like, the most gushing player they had, for despite all the tight ends, because all the big tight ends were at the Senior Bowl, it was Jeremy Ruckert. And the Jets get what I believe, and the only reason I have McBride ahead of him is I believe McBride's the most pro-ready tight end to come in and step in day one and contribute. But I think he's got a lower ceiling. Ruckert was my number 2 tight end in this draft because I look at the physicality, the ability to be a blocker, the ability to run routes, the ability to make plays. He could do a bit of everything. And you look at the physical traits he had. I mean, I look at some of these other tight ends, Likely, Dulich, Collier. They might be a touch more explosive, but they're also smaller tight ends. They're not as great blockers. Like he, to me, could be a really dark horse prospect to be one of the better players in this entire draft. And this night started with the Jets getting one of the most explosive running backs in this draft. I mean, the Joe Douglas, the first 2 years, I think did a really good job of laying a foundation for this team and building depth and getting guys to change the culture. But the Jets really were lacking playmakers. And you saw them trying to get in Tyreek Hill. You saw with Debo. This team needed playmakers. They need difference makers in the room. And you look at the players that they've gone after, all of them are difference makers. All of them are guys that they envision are going to make big impacts on the game, not only every play, but they have the chance to change the tides of the games. And even tonight with Jeremy Ruckert with the last pick, I believe that they feel that he could be their version of George Kittle. I mean, don't forget, George Kittle was a later round draft pick, but you look at the physical tools he had and the toolbox he had and the way San Francisco developed him into what he is today. I believe the Jets looked at Ruckert as this is the kid who has the most tools and the kid that has the most upside in this entire draft in a tight end group, which is a talented tight end group to say the least. And if they could even get half of what of Kittle is out of this kid, they're going to have a very good tight end. KD, I still can't believe how great this draft has been looking. Even if the team underperforms, JD deserves an extension. Like that's the other thing too. Like people want to kill Douglas. I I really think people, even with all this talent, they need to temper the expectation. I think this is a 7-win team, but I believe he's showing. Look, he knows how to build a team. A lot of this, it's still going to be dependent on what Zach Wilson does. I mean, let's be honest, but you can't say that he put his quarterback in position to fail. Like you can, like one of the narratives I hate is people saying, "Well, Joe Douglas promised Sam Darnold's parents he would do the best to build around him." But you look at where he was starting from, and you look at what he had to work with. I mean, he basically had one draft for Sam for a coach that really didn't mesh well with him, and he didn't even pick the coach. Coach picked him, which is ironic. But you look now, like him and Sal appear to be on the same page. Him and Sal appear to be on the same page. And I haven't checked out the press conference yet. I'll give more detail tomorrow. We'll be doing another live stream after day 3 of the draft to recap the whole draft. Might be a short day for the Jets. We might have 2 picks tomorrow, but we'll do it at the full conclusion of the draft. It's something that I'm just trying to see. Maybe Twitter's mentioned it too. Like, I'm really curious where Breece Hall fell on their board. I'm curious. I don't think he probably was a top 10 player on their board, but I'm pretty sure he was a top 15. And if the Jets got 4 of their top 15 players, Chris Sims left the picks. Jeremy Ruckert from Chris Sims on Twitter. I have no doubt that this is the best tight end in the draft. He's good in all areas, hand on the line, scrimmage block check, line up as at fullback to smash a linebacker check, smooth release check. With Ruckerts and CJ Uzma, Jets only have a strong tight. And I actually believe that's what's going to happen. I believe the tight ends they're going to roll out with Uzma and with Ruckert. Conklin is still a good tight end, but what I believe in what I believe he will be is their backup. Like he will be their backup tight end and it's damn good backup. Just looking here. Joe Douglas confirmed they were trying to be aggressive and trade up for Breece Hall, calling him a top 20 playmaker in 2022. Like he is a playmaker. He is an unbelievable player. And you look at someone that you now get to pair with Michael Carter. I mean, this has just been an unbelievable sports weekend for me. I mean, Mets fan, the Mets combined for a no-hitter tonight while I'm watching the draft. I kept flipping in between the two. And one of the things I think that was very interesting about this draft and very telling is whether people are comfortable with it or not, the Jets have made a statement that they must feel confident enough in Mekhi Becton. Now, again, they could probably still get depth at tackle that they didn't think it was that as big of a need. Now, could they still go with Fant at left tackle and move Becton to right? That's still something to be seen, but it's clear to me that this team feels that they're good enough at tackle. And you also wonder too how much is this the Bengals approach, where it's the NFL has become such a skill league, and yes, the offensive line is important, But I think the Jets feel that their offensive line is good enough that they just need to add as many playmakers to it as possible. Uh, what a draft so far. This is excellent with Ruckert pick. Ruckert necessarily wasn't a need, but I do agree he was the best left. Ruckert to me, like if you were to ask me which of these tight ends has the highest ceiling, it could be a perennial Pro Bowl or it's Jeremy Ruckert. I mean, this was a 4-star recruit. This is someone highly advanced. And look, the reason he didn't get the pub is because he was on a great team with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, two guys that went 10 and 11 in this draft. And in some ways, I respect that more about him. How many guys would have just left the program or complained that they weren't getting touched? I mean, Trey McBride had the great production, was also at Colorado State where they didn't have anyone else, and they were playing in the Mountain West, where it's when you're a 6'5" tight end, it's kind of easy to dominate a little bit more when you're playing in a smaller conference and you're basically the focal point of the entire offense. But I look at Jeremy Ruckert. He is an all around player. And just the fact that he grew up a Jets fan, wanting to play for the Jets, and his family's Jet fans, it just adds so much to it. A combination of Perry and Winfrey and Romy does what seal this draft for me. KD, I agree with you on Perry and Winfrey. Like, if I'm the Jets, I'm going up to get him because you could get basically. Now, I think people are going to say, I wouldn't go as far as to say Ruckert's a first round talent, but I would say in this draft, he's conservatively a good second round talent. Breece Hall's a first round talent. I mean, the Jets have 4 first round talents on this team already. I think Perry and Winfrey is a first round talent that's sitting there on day 3. If the Jets walk away with 5 first round talents in this draft, I mean, we're talking about Winfrey being a day 1 starter, Jermaine Johnson being a day 1 star, Sauce Gardner being a day 1 starter. If I'm the Jets too, I wouldn't wait. I think there's a chance he could fall to the Jets, but I'm getting on the phone with Tampa and I'm calling them tonight and I'm seeing what I can do. I would maybe even entertain. I said it earlier today, and I know this was an unpopular opinion, but I'd also look at what you could get for Bryce Hall. If I could get Bryce Hall for Tampa's fourth pick, and again, I don't think they need a corner, but if I could get that done, that way I move up in the draft. I got Bryce Hall for a 5th round pick. I'm able to get a 4th round pick. So then I have 3 4th round picks. And I'm able to use that on a defensive tackle that I think is going to start. And then I not only have that, but then the 2 additional 4th round picks to move back and get more capital. I'm all for it. Now, I don't think you can trade both 4th round picks. What the Jets are probably going to have to do in order to move up is get a little crafty and probably do 4th and 6th. But one thing I would also keep an eye on that I think about, because most of my mock drafts have been doing this, the Blake Cashman trade could be really key in all this, because don't forget they traded Blake Cashman for a future 6th round pick for the Texans. So could you go to Tampa Bay and call them and say, we'll have you move back 6 spots where we are at 4. I mean, it's not that big of a drop, and we'll give you a future 6. I think Tampa Bay would absolutely do that. And especially next year when you're not sure where Tom Brady's future is, they probably want to get a little bit more capital for next year. Like, I would be on the phone trying to get to Tampa's first pick and get Perry and Winfrey, because no matter what they do with the rest of the picks in this draft, like, that would be a grand slam draft for me. I agree. He was on a team where they had to share the load with 3 top receivers. Yeah, that's the thing. He had so many figures. And I will say the quarterback play wasn't as great at Ohio State last year. And I mean, I just look at Jeremy Ruckert. I just think he's such a good player. And I mean, I know he didn't play a ton, but I also really appreciate what he was able to do. I mean, he finished last year in high school. He was an unbelievable player, but and in the Senior Bowl, I do think, which actually helps the Jets too, is he had a foot injury in the Senior Bowl, which I think if he continued playing Senior Bowl, I think he would have been the number 1 tight end. But you look like in his college, like he didn't really become a starter this year, but 26 catches, 309 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he doesn't drop the football. He was an honorable Big Ten mention, even with 26 catches. I mean, that just shows you what he can do. And look, he is an aggressive blocker. He needs to refine his technique, but you could tell, like the Jets even said, this kid loves contact. He loves hitting. And they add that to Breece Hall. I mean, think about what the Jets have added in this draft for their young quarterback. They've added the number one running back, the number one receiver. They've given him not one, not two, but three tight ends through free agency, a Pro Bowl guard in Laken Tomlinson. That's unbelievable. Like that narrative that drove me nuts with Trevor Lawrence that the Jets won't help Lawrence. The Jets are going to screw him up. The Jets aren't going to get him weapons. The Jets won't do anything. Look at what the Jets have done for their second year quarterback. And again, this is now on Zach Wilson because the Jets have gone above and beyond. But let's look at Jacksonville, for example. What was their big move? Brandon Sheriff, who's over 30 and gets hurt. Trayvon Walker, who a lot of people were scratching their heads. And then this was my favorite. And again, I love Devin Lloyd and Chad Muma, but did Jacksonville really need two linebackers? And I like Fortner, the center they got, but because their offensive line is still terrible, but they didn't really get a lot of playmakers for Trevor now, did they? No, they really didn't. Well, what about Chicago? Yeah, I know they didn't have a first-round pick here, but hey, they had the 7th pick, the 16th pick, and the 7th pick. Live receivers were on the board. I mean, George Pickens, Alec Pierce. What did they do? Oh, they got Kyler Gordon a corner and Jaquan Brisker, a safety I like, but a safety. And then they got Velus Jones as their receiver in the 3rd round. Velus Jones. Like I've been studying the draft, and even I had to pause. I'm like, Velus Jones, like he is rated as a 5th to 6th round pick. That's who they got in the 3rd round of the draft for Justin Fields. I mean, I think San Francisco did better. I mean, San Francisco, let's be honest, has a better roster, but even a bit in this draft I'm not even sure if they really believe that much in Trey Lance because they still haven't moved Garoppolo. And I do think a part of that is I don't think they're sure. I mean, they got Danny Gray and Ty Davis Price tonight, but like the Patriots, like I know they got a guard. I think they overdrafted him a little, even though I love Cole Strange personally. I think he's an unbelievable player, but I just look around the league. I mean, the Jets, I don't think any team has done more for a second-year quarterback than what this Jet team has done. Winfrey would be an amazing addition just for running downs alone. His ability to stop the run. And Katie, he's a good pass rusher. He's got great hands. He's good screen separation. He's got a powerful first punch. I mean, we're talking about a defensive line where you can build around Quinnen, you can build around Perrion, you can build around Jermaine Johnson. You already have John Franklin Myers as a piece, and that's already a great defensive line. And if Carl Lawson is 90% of the player he was before the Achilles, I mean, that's just gravy right now on this defensive line. This has been the best draft in all my 35 years as fandom. I agree on the surface. Now, the Jets still have to develop these players, and I feel confident with this coaching staff, and they have to perform. But I feel like they also not only got high talent guys, but they got guys I feel pretty safe about knowing I'm like, okay, there's really big red flags. Like Garrett Wilson, the receiver, he might not have as high of a ceiling as like a Jameson Williams in this draft. But I do think he's the most pro ready and he's going to be highly productive. I feel like the very worst, you're going to get a very high end number 2, potentially low number 1 receiver with Garrett Wilson. But I mean, they're betting on like traits, but they're betting on guys that have played a lot, that have had good, clean track records. They're guys that you can tell love football, and guys that all you hear about is how much they care about the game and how much they love freaking football. And I will say too, like it's different fandom in New York tonight because both fandoms felt great last night. But I liked what the Giants did. But the more I actually thought about what the Giants did last night, I kind of had questions because my reaction from Giant fans was like, "Yeah, we got Kayvon at 5," and I was thinking, "Yeah, but you knew Carolina was going to take a tackle, so you could have gone Icky at 5 and then Kayvon at 7." And look, they still got Evan Neal, but they ended up getting like the second best one. And then tonight, like the Giants was weird. They had a weird night because I know a lot of it is they wanted to trade down, and I know they got a ton of picks tomorrow to help with their cap situation. But I mean, I like Izuta, the guard. He's decent in the 3rd round, but then Cordell Flott, I was like, that's a stretch in the 3rd round. And I mean, Wendell Robinson, that one to me was a real head scratcher. And I understand the drop for Nakobe Dean was the injuries, but I still would have taken a shot on him. I really would have. I just think there's such a high ceiling with him. I would have taken a shot. But I mean, when Dale Robinson was like a early fourth round receiver, play slot, he's kind of what Kadarius Toney already is on that team. And the team says they're not interested in trading Kadarius Toney, but they drafted a player that seems like his replacement in the second round. So I'm really curious to see what exactly they do. Um, but let's see. They've done everything for Zachary. It's on him now. It's a lot of pressure. And I mean, I've heard all the positives about Zach. I think he's doing a great job this offseason. I think it's great he's working with receivers. They even were saying he was bugging Garrett Wilson last night about getting together and working. Yeah, of course, June Jet formally, all of them are captains and locker room guys. Absolutely. That's one of the things I kept saying, like the tendencies Joe Douglas looked for. Those are the type of players. Well, who do you have for us at 11 and 117? Braden, I think it's a little early for that. I've been speculating that I think they're not going to pick at those slots. My thought process is I love Perry and Winfrey. Like he's the guy I would be hell bent to get right now. And I think to do that, you go and trade the first, fourth round pick. Like I would be calling Tampa and saying, here's our fourth. You move back 6 spots. We'll give you the 6th round pick next year, which is a pick they got for Blake Cashman when they traded him to the Texans. That would be the guy I go after. Now, the second, 4th round pick, it depends on what the Jets feel. If the Jets feel confident in their depth, then take the best player available. But I just have this feeling that Joe is going to probably look to get some capital back. I mean, they've already burned 2 5th-round picks. If he could turn that into 2 day 3 picks, I think he will. Because the other thing, too, is a lot of the Jets meetings, they had a wide variety of them, but there's still a lot of guys that they had top 30 meetings with that are kind of day 3 guys that are still there. Well, out in the corner from Columbia, BJ Baylor, Darren Bland, Percy Butler, Tariq Carpenter, Leonard Johnson, Isaiah Likely, but he's probably out now that they drafted Jeremy Ruckert, Jake Lukita, Tasir Mack, Bo Melton, the receiver from Rutgers. He's someone maybe even the 4th round they look at hard tomorrow. Brandon Smith, Pierre Strong. I don't think they'll do with him with the running back. Demetrius Taylor, Jalen Watson, and Perrion Winfrey. And the other thing, too, is Tariq Woolen. Like, he's a fascinating prospect, really great physical corner, who I really love. And the other thing, too, is what they do with the offensive line, because there's a couple guys right now. Like, Darren Kinner is more of a right tackle guard. But you also have Daniel Falali, who is a 6'8", 385-pounder, who they had the Senior Bowl. I mean, he's a massive human. And even if you want to just have him for insurance to be your right tackle and your swing backup tackle, I think it's worth it here in the 4th round. I don't think he'll be good enough to play left tackle with his feet, but you could have your future starting right tackle next year if you lose Fant. It'll be interesting to see, too. Like, I know Marquise Hayes is a guard. I don't think they'll go after him. I think they're going to kind of look for tackle. I mean, there's a couple of tackle prospects that maybe they look at later. I mean, Rashad Walker out of Penn State is one. Could they shock everyone? Take Matt Ariza, the punter from San Diego State. I mean, he's been something this offseason. Now, they still haven't addressed the safety position. I personally think that they feel good enough. I think they're still trying to see what Ashton Davis can do. I think they feel like they have 5 or 6 guys that can compete. They already have a star in Whitehead. They're just trying to figure out the next couple guys up. So I just think that will be also part of it. Zach Tom, a tackle from Wake Forest, also played a bit of center. He's someone from Wake Forest I would keep an eye on tomorrow. I really think it's going to be a lot of depth. I think they're going to try to address defensive tackle and offensive line because they've added a lot of playmakers, and I do think they'd like to get a little bit more depth. But June, mark my words, Winfrey. June to Jet, I'm going to hold you to that because when we come back tomorrow, you better be here. And when we do get Perry and Winfrey, we're going to be freaking celebrating. What about linebacker? Jennifer, that's a really good question. There was a big run on the linebacker position before the Jets unfortunately drafted. So I think the Jets feel confident. The Jets like their linebackers now. And really only play with 2 linebackers on the field, but it really be trying to find CJ Mosley's future replacement. Now, you had a big run. You had Kobe Dean come off the board, obviously. So there's a couple of guys that I do wonder if they could be there. I mean, Jojo Doman from Nebraska, fast player, bit undersized, like 6'1", 228. Uh, really had tough time in coverage. I think he would be someone. These are guys I wouldn't take in the fourth round. They're fifth round. Darian Beavers from Cincinnati. One guy I would keep an eye on because the Jets did bring him in for a workout, and he would be someone I think would be in the fifth round. They trade back. Um, is I mean, Brandon Smith is more of an edge rusher from Penn State. He's a linebacker that they worked out. Now they could maybe look at him in that regard. But there's one other linebacker they brought in. Oh, Jake Lukita from Penn State. He's someone I could see them. Jesse Lukita. I mean, he's more of an edge, but maybe they can move him a bit inside if they feel comfortable with him. I'm just trying to go through my list right now of all the remaining prospects that I've been updating throughout the day just to make sure I'm not missing anyone. Um, yeah, Brandon Smith probably later around picking me 6'4", 250. Big kid. Lot of tools. So I could see I could see the linebacker, but not in the fourth round. But I think you're gonna have to see them as trade back. Malcolm Rodriguez, Brandon Smith, kind of small. If they don't address safety, remember I said this Honey Badger will be signed next week. I wouldn't hate that. But don't forget too, they also brought back Joyner, who's someone they actually really like. I think Joyner can be a solid starter for this team at least for a year. I know people hate it when I say this, but they still really like Ashton Davis. They're hoping a full off season is going to be helping him. I mean, Will Parks played well. Jason Pinnock is basically trained this whole off season to be a safety. He played really well down the stretch. And Pinnock is someone I think is going to make this roster because he offers that corner safety versatility. So it's a guy that you can kill two birds with one stone in terms of roster build. I can definitely see Brandon Smith. Again, it'd be the fifth or sixth round. So my thought is if I'm Joe Douglas, and I could be wrong, he might wait till 4. For all I know, he might trade both fourth round picks, move back and get multiple picks. But if I'm him, they really like Winfrey. Winfrey played for them at the Senior Bowl. He was a Senior Bowl MVP. It just makes way too much sense for me to go up and get him. Like I would be on the phone tonight trying to get up to Tampa, or if you feel Tampa's convinced, because I know Tampa needs a D tackle. I'm just trying to rack my brain and remember, did Tampa take a tackle tonight? I don't believe they did, but I'm going to double check right now because I thought that they would be in play like for example, Travis Jones. I really thought that they would be someone that would be looking no, they got Logan Hall, so they probably don't need a defensive tackle. Let's see who else is before the Jets tomorrow. Because I know, let's see. Tomorrow, I know the Bucks are ahead of them. The Texans are ahead of them. I'm trying to think. Texans definitely need D line, so I'm trying to remember who the Texans picked tonight because Texans have been all over the place. Let me just check on the Texans who they drafted tonight really quick. So I know they went offensive line. No, so they need a defensive tackle. I think they would be in play, and it'd be like I think I would do what you did tonight, which is you jump them. They really want Breece Hall. You jump them up to 36 tonight. I would call Tampa and I would try to jump them, even if it cost me a future. It only probably cost you a future third in addition to the fourth. I'd try to get the Blake Cashman pick for 6, but if you had thrown a 5, I wouldn't hate it. I would go after that. Titus Hall keeps Davis around, so I'm not selling Sal yet. Look, they're keeping him around because, unfortunately for him, he had to play 2 off seasons where he didn't have training camps. He had the COVID. And look, Ashton Davis was always a project player. He was someone that the Jets almost wanted a red shirt behind Marcus May and behind Jamal Adams. And unfortunately, he was called into action his rookie year. You see the physical tools he has. He has the physical tools to be a really good player. The question is, can he get up to speed and the football IQ? Now, last year did not go well, I will admit. But also don't forget, too, he's coming back from the injury. Basically had to hit the ground running. So this is a make or break year for him. And I will say this: I have more faith in him than I do in Denzel Mims. But I do think the Jets also have Will Parks. They have a couple guys that they found last year that they really like and feel can at least hold it down for another year. Um, I think with Honey Badger too is I really like Honey Badger, but I don't know if he wants to come to the Jets. He might want to go to a team that he feels can win a Super Bowl. It all depends on what he really wants. Let's see. Tampa could very well take him. Tampa could also take him too. I doubt they will because they've already got Logan Hall there, but they could also be in play. Like if I am the Jets, my first call would be get up to Tampa because they've done a really good job with this roster. Really, right now, defensive tackle is the one need that they really have. Could they afford to wait and get someone later in this draft at defensive tackle? I know John Ridgway of Arkansas. I mean, Matthew Butler, someone they've had some interest in, and he's a decent pass rusher. I think he's probably more of a fifth or sixth round pick. Um, there's there might be a defensive tackle that we don't really think about right now that they maybe go after, but uh, if I'm them, I think Perry and Winfrey is by far and away the best one still on the board, and I think he was one of the top 50 players in the entire draft, to be honest with you. And if you can get one of the top 50 players on the top of day 3, I think you've had an unbelievable draft, and I think he's the third best defensive tackle. I really do. Um, you look, he has great length, 6'4", 290, good hands. He's really good at getting people, and he's got good pass rush ability too. Like this isn't just someone that's just a big body that's just going to stop the run. He can play the run, but you look at his motor, his energy, like he is just tough to block, and it's going to be tough to block these guys. The Jets improve the secondary so you can hold these receivers a little longer. The Jets have guys that now, John Franklin Myers, if you get him and Quinnen and all these guys, you have guys that can get to the freaking quarterback now, which is what you want. If we were able to get Winfrey and Smith in the draft, which Smith are you talking about? The Smith from Penn State? So, yeah, I think he'd be a really good player. But we'll have to see what the Jets decide to do. I do think if you got Winfrey, it's a grand slam. Like they could take freaking the punter with the 5th pick and they'd be fine. So it's just one of those things too, where I just look at too, like the Jets were aggressive in this draft. I felt they had to be aggressive. They were aggressive twice, and it paid massive rewards, both in Jermaine Johnson, which was a player that was a top 10 player. Breece Hall is probably one of the top 25 players in this draft, and he's probably the best running back. And you look, they've given their team great playmakers, and they've given their team great depth. If Garrett Wilson goes out, they still have good wide receiver depth. If Michael Carter gets nicked up for 3 or 4 games, they still have running back depth. I mean, Tevin Coleman's now their 3rd running back. I mean, they have a good depth at running back. I mean, all the positions now have good depth. The tight end room, for God's sakes, look at the tight end room. What a difference here, man. We were talking about them throwing a Ryan Griffin last year. Dan Brown. I mean, Connor McDermott was probably one of the best Jets tight ends, and he had 1 touchdown catch last year. That's how bad the tight end room's been. It's been god awful. And the Jets not only overhauling free agency, they get what I believe could be the guy with the biggest ceiling at tight end and one of the most athletic tight ends in the draft. I think that they have absolutely killed it, and they waited and they got him with a compensation pick that they basically kept. Like I said this morning, where I said, look, if you're the Jets, you made a great trade with the Titans because not only did you give up both second round picks, but Joe Douglas was smart. Basically, to go up and get their pass rusher, they really only gave up a 5th because what they did was they traded. Yeah, the 69 pick was a great value, but they got the 101st pick from Tennessee. So they still came into tonight with 2 picks. They could have easily come in tonight with only 1 pick. And they ended up using basically 2 5th-round picks to ensure that they got the pass rusher that they believe is one of the top 7 players or top 8 players in the entire draft and secured the number 1 running back in the entire draft. They were able to do that by trading 5th-round picks or guys who you hope make the roster. And now they come into tomorrow with 2 4th-round picks, and they have a lot of flexibility. If I'm the Jets and I'm Joe Douglas, I use the first 4th. I use a future pick for next year. I go up and get Perry and Winfrey. I'm the first team on the podium tomorrow. And then with that last pick, say, hey, Someone make me an offer. Give me either 2 picks this year or a decent pick next year and a pick tomorrow night to move back. Because don't forget, Darian Kennard might be, I don't think it'll last all the way to that fourth round pick, but I mean, there's a couple of pretty decent offensive linemen. Sam Howell is there, Falali's there, Ignabari from South Carolina's there, Tariq Woolen, who I think is, I mean, he's called the Rick Freak in this draft. He's someone there, like you look at his tools. I mean, he's a 6'4", 205-pound corner that runs like a 4.29. I mean, that's a freak athlete. There's Kobe Bryant, who looks like a very good corner. I mean, there's some pretty good prospects still on this board. And if a team really loves that player, they want to make sure they get him tomorrow. There's a lot of good day 2 talent here. And the Jets have 2 really good fourth-round picks. Even the second fourth-round pick is still a pretty decent one because it was from the Vikings. I'm going to look at it again. It's for the first one 117 or the second one 117. I think the first one's 111. Yeah, the first one's 111. The next one's 117, which is the 12th pick in the next round. I mean, right behind the Jets is the Browns and the Ravens. I mean, there's a couple teams like the way this draft's gone. I mean, what's the one team that keeps jumping the Ravens? Because they're making a joke about it. And it was to get like Alabama players too. Or no, it was they were getting Alabama players. So, I mean, I could see a team easily coming up to 12 and either Jets get a great pick next year for that, including a pick tomorrow night, or they just get 2 good picks, whether it's a 5th and 7th. You might even get a 5th and a 6th. Because like I'm going to look at like the trade value chart, the Jimmy Johnson trade value chart, the points for tomorrow night, that 117 picks worth 60 points. So, for example, a 5th round pick, the top 5th round pick is worth 34. So the Jets could easily get a 5th and a 6th and maybe even a future 7th or something, because you look at the 5th and 7th rounders, like mid is like 20 points in the 5th, 6 are like low teens. So the Jets can maybe get 3 picks out. They might get like a 5th, a 7th, and a future 6 or a future 4th. I mean, they could do a lot with that pick. So I think you're aggressive with 111, go up and get Perry and Winfrey, use this next one to trade down, because the Jets basically would have traded 3 late round picks to go up and get guys they wanted. And if you want to get more depth, you can turn that next pick into at least 2 picks tomorrow night. So the Jets still will come away with 3 picks on day 3 when they started the entire draft with 4 picks on day 3. So in the grand scheme of everything, I think the Jets, the smart thing is to propel back. But again, if you're new to this channel, if you love Jets content, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our latest Jet content. Lots of reactions, up-to-date stories from the Jets. If you're new to the channel, thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to have you in the community page. I will put tomorrow a poll on the page about what you think the entire draft grade is. Asked you a question if you guys were still up. One person said no. So I know it's late, especially here on the East Coast. I'm guessing a lot of guys in the chat here on the West Coast. But yeah, we will be back tomorrow, wrapping up round 3. Hopefully, June the Jet, Perry and Winfrey. I mean, should we do the Devontae Mack, the unfolding the note card and, Perry and Winfrey, no matter what, like Devontae Mack and draft day, like that's what I'm hoping happens tomorrow. So go get them. Like Joe Douglas, you already hit a grand slam. Throw also like a no-hitter tomorrow too. Like go get Perry and Winfrey with the first pick in the 4th round. I mean, and then move back later. But the Jets still have a lot of excitement because it just feels like, okay, the Jets couldn't have topped day 1. Then they get Breece Hall. And you're like, okay, they can't make this any better. Then they get Jeremy Ruckert. It's like every time I feel like the Jets, like this is a weird feeling. You feel like the Jets in this draft, like it feels like you're going to be let down at some point. You're just expecting. I mean, it's unfortunate. We're conditioned to expect the letdown. We're like 36, like, okay, this is going to be someone bad. Holy crap, it's Breece Hall. Then I'm like, oh God, who's it going to be? I really want Perry and Winfrey. Maybe it's someone, or is it going to be like some unknown lineman? And you're like, no, it's Jeremy Ruckert. You're like, really? Like this guy? I mean, Jesus, very weird. I think are you talking about the Yeah, the feeling. Yeah, it's been a very weird draft. It's been a great feeling. So enjoy it. Again, guys, we'll be back here tomorrow recapping the full draft, full grades, full analysis. Be here tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon, whenever the draft ends. We'll recap day 3 of the NFL draft for the New York Jets. But man, Joe Douglas, wear that crown tonight. I mean, the only team I could see making a case is maybe the Lions or maybe the Ravens, but the Jets have just been knocking it out of the park in this draft. And of course, this was the draft that we've been hyping for more than a year since the Jamal Adams trade. This has been the draft Jets fans have waited for. And I can say, as of now, the wait has been well worth it. Good night, guys. We'll see you tomorrow here on Rich Sports Talk.